One stormy night, two exhausted Marines, one simple question asked with quiet dignity. "Mom, could we sleep in your barn?" They weren't asking for comfort. They weren't asking for charity. They were asking for shelter from the cold, from the past, and from a world that no longer seemed to see them. What followed that night would ripple far beyond a wooden barn, exposing silent sacrifices, testing humanity, and reminding everyone who witnessed it what honor truly looks like. This is not just a story, it's a reckoning. Before we begin, take a moment and tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. Whether it's a quiet bedroom, a late night shift, or halfway across the world, we see you. And if you believe stories still matter, if you believe silent heroes deserve to be remembered, please subscribe now, before the story begins, because this is one you won't forget. Explosive high stakes opening. The woman's hand froze on the porch railing as the words settled into the cold night air. "We don't need a bed," the Marine said quietly. "Just a place to rest. The barn would be fine." Mud clung to his boots. Rain darkened his sleeves. His voice never shook, but something else did. The world, perhaps, or the fragile line between dignity and desperation. Behind him, the second Marine swayed slightly, pale under the porch light, holding himself together by will alone. The woman could have shut the door. Most people would have. And for a single breathless moment, it looked like she might. They had come out of the darkness without warning. Two figures moving slowly up the gravel drive of a farmhouse that hadn't seen visitors this late in years. The first Marine stood straighter than exhaustion should allow. His posture was learned, etched into muscle memory long before this night. The second leaned subtly toward him, not enough to be obvious, but enough for someone who knew to see it. Their uniforms were clean but worn, jackets faded at the elbows. Not ceremonial, not impressive, just practical, real. The woman, Eleanor Whittaker, noticed everything in a single glance. The way the taller Marine positioned himself half a step forward. The way his eyes kept flicking outward, scanning the darkness, even now. Protecting. Always protecting. What she did not yet see were the invisible wounds. The kind that don't bleed. The kind that follow you home. Staff Sergeant Daniel Mercer had learned long ago how to stand without leaning, even when his body screamed otherwise. Years earlier, he had stood in deserts that smelled like burning metal and dust so fine it coated the lungs. He had stood in villages reduced to rubble, listening for sounds that meant life or death. He had stood over friends whose names were now carved into stone. He remembered the weight of his rifle, the constant hum of danger beneath every sound. He remembered the heat, the sweat pooling beneath his armor, the metallic taste of fear that never quite went away, and he remembered the silence afterward. The silence was always worse. Coming home had not been the relief everyone promised. Home was loud in the wrong ways and quiet in the ones that mattered. People asked polite questions and waited for neat answers. They thanked him for his service and then stepped past him as if gratitude were a transaction already completed. His closest friend, Corporal Lucas Hale, had not come home at all. Daniel still smelled diesel fuel whenever it rained. Still woke at night reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Still carried guilt like a second spine, rigid, unyielding. Tonight, his body ached from a long journey on foot after their ride fell through. His companion, Private First Class Jonah Reed, was fighting something worse than exhaustion. Jonah was burning with fever, and Daniel would not let him fall. Eleanor hesitated because the world had taught her to. She lived alone on the farm now, her husband gone 5 winters back, her children scattered across cities that moved too fast for her liking. She had learned caution the hard way, learned that kindness could be costly. The rules said not to invite strangers in, the news said to be afraid, the quiet voice in her head said be careful. Behind her, the house was warm, the kitchen still smelled faintly of soup. The door represented safety, control, certainty. In front of her stood 2 men who had asked for nothing but a corner of shelter. The wind cut sharper. Jonah coughed, a rough sound he tried, and failed to suppress. Daniel noticed. He always noticed. "We'll be gone before sunrise," he said, already preparing for refusal. His voice carried no entitlement, no bitterness, just fact. Eleanor saw something then that unsettled her. He wasn't asking for himself. The neighbor's truck slowed on the road, headlights sweeping across the yard. Someone watched from behind a curtain in the house across the field. Judgment hovered in the air, unspoken but heavy. Eleanor felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her. She could imagine the whispers if something went wrong. She could imagine the regret if she said yes and paid for it. Daniel stood unmoving, rain soaking through his jacket, his jaw clenched, not in anger, but restraint. He had stood before men with weapons. He had stood before explosions. This moment, this quiet waiting, was harder. Jonah's knees buckled just slightly. Daniel shifted without thought, anchoring him. A hand firm, steady, reassuring. Eleanor saw the gesture. Something inside her broke open. "The barn's old," she said finally. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "But it's dry. Hay in the back. I'll leave a lantern." Relief did not flood Daniel's face. Instead, he nodded once. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. And the gratitude in those words carried more weight than any speech. They did not ask for food. They did not ask for blankets. They did not ask for more. As they turned away, Eleanor felt a sudden, sharp certainty. This night mattered. Eleanor did not sleep. She sat at her kitchen table long after midnight, listening to the wind rattle the windows, thinking of the way Daniel had looked at Jonah, as if nothing else in the world existed. At dawn, she brought coffee out to the barn. What she found stopped her cold. Daniel was awake, sitting upright despite the hay beneath him, eyes alert. Jonah lay resting, color slightly returned to his face. Daniel rose immediately when he saw her, respectful even now. She noticed then the scars along his hands. The way his movements were economical, precise. The way exhaustion bent him, but did not break him. "You kept watch all night," she said quietly. Daniel did not deny it. Word spread faster than Eleanor expected. By noon, a pickup truck pulled into the drive, then another. A man from the local VFW recognized the insignia on Daniel's jacket. Someone made a call. By evening, the barn was no longer just a barn. It was a gathering place. Veterans came quietly, no speeches, no spectacle, just presence. Coffee appeared. A doctor arrived without fanfare. Jonah was examined, treated, and finally allowed to sleep deeply. Daniel stood off to the side, uncomfortable with the attention, hands clasped behind his back. When someone thanked him, he replied simply, "We just did our job." An older veteran, voice rough with age, said softly, "Funny how the strongest people never ask for much." Eleanor later said, her eyes wet, "They asked for a barn and reminded us what honor looks like." And Daniel, when pressed, only said, "Service doesn't end when the uniform comes off." The following morning, the sun rose clear and bright. People stood in the yard as Daniel and Jonah prepared to leave. Rides arranged, help offered, paths made easier. No one clapped. No one cheered. They simply stood. Hats came off. Conversation stopped. Silence fell, not awkward, but reverent. Daniel noticed. His throat tightened. He nodded once, deeply. For the first time in a long while, the silence felt full. That night, a Marine asked to sleep in a barn. Not because he was weak, but because he was human. And in answering that question, a community remembered something vital. That dignity is quiet. That honor does not announce itself. And that some of the strongest battles are fought long after the war is over. If this story moved you, tell us where you're watching from, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories that honor the silent heroes among us. Because sometimes, the smallest questions carry the greatest truths.